Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Hip Hop with Pop. I'm your host, Rashad Myers.
I'm Pop. I'm John.
And this is a podcast where Dad and I just kind of chop it up about the music and artists that we really have grown to love over the years. We hope you enjoy this as much as we enjoy having this discussion and sharing music with each other, as well as a little bit of conversation. So without further ado, I want to thank our sponsors, 314 City Gear, the creators of this fine hat here and this hoodie. We got a lot of cool stuff on the website there, www.314citygear.com. Make sure you get on there and check out all the cool stuff that they have. It's St. Louis-centric gear, and we think it's pretty cool. So, also Leah Myers, who's my wife and realtor with Keller Williams. You can find her on Facebook, Leah Myers, and she would like to say that whether you're looking to sell a house or buy a house, just reach out and see if she can help you. There's also a staging and like a decluttering organization aspect to her business. So just make sure you can, if you have a need, reach out and let her know what you're up to. So, did you want to start off, or did you want me to?
Yeah, I will start.
Okay.
I'll start in this case with an artist whom we know. His name is Riley B. King. We know him as BB King, and BB King is part of a triad of three other Kings: BB, Freddy, and Albert King.
And any relation there?
They're all Kings. That's their full name. They're all King boys, except I'm not so sure about the history of Freddy. Is his real name is King or not? But they're all Kings, and they are considered the three kings of blues. And we already talked about the father of blues, Muddy Waters. Mm-hmm. And Riley B. King changed his name from Riley to BB at an early age as he began to work in Mississippi. He was born in Rolling Forks, Mississippi, which is the southern portion of the Delta. Again, not terribly far from where I grew up, an hour's drive thereabout, a little bit more. And as a young man, he worked in a cotton gin in Indianola, Mississippi, and then began to play in little juke joints around that area. And then on a radio station, he became known in the southern portion of the Delta. Went up to Memphis for a short time, and from Memphis he caught the Illinois Central Railroad and ended up in Chicago as well for a period of time. He didn't stay there, but he did go to Chicago for a period of time, and he recorded with Crown Label, Kent, and MCA and ABC. And that's Riley B. King, as we know as BB, Blues Boy King.
Okay, let's get into it then.
Name of the song?
Rock Me Baby would be the name.
Rock Me Baby is one of his famous, most well-known songs, yeah.
Good call, Q. That's producer Q.
There has been some debate about BB and Albert King as to who was the best guitar player. And I don't know, I can't select to determine which one. They were outstanding guitar players, as well as Freddy. The story goes, in terms of guitar, is that there was a fire in a bar where BB was playing one night down south, and the ushers rushed everybody out of the building where the fire was occurring, and BB King rushed back into a burning building. And people asked, why would he do? What is he going back in there for? And the response from a band member was that he was going back in to get Lucille. Well, Lucille, we thought everybody was out of the building. Well, by that time, BB came out with his guitar, and that was Lucille, named Lucille. And of all the guys of that era who lived in Chicago for a time, BB, as I said before, did not stay in Chicago. He spent a great deal of his time on the East Coast. And he, more than any other artist, traveled from city to city with his band. As a matter of fact, I don't call it a band, I call it an orchestra. He had probably a 20-piece group of people, musicians with his band. And every year, at least once a year, he would come to Jackson, Mississippi and play for the Teachers Association in Jackson. And that was a big event. So people from not only Jackson, but from Meridian, Baton Rouge, from northern Mississippi will come down and listen to B.B. King in Jackson, Mississippi.
Well, to your point, I had read somewhere on the internet, it must have been true, that the several years leading up before he had passed away, he was still playing over 300 nights a year.
He traveled exactly so.
300. That's a lot of that's a lot of shows.
A lot of shows.
A lot of travel.
Yes, yeah, he did. And
I don't know if there's anybody else who has a more famous instrument. Like, can you think of anybody else who has like an instrument that everybody knows the name of that instrument? It's got to be the most famous guitar in the world.
I think it is. I don't know if getting back to my man Bach. I don't think Bach doesn't have a organ playing named after him, or even little Walter Jacobs does not have a harmonica named after him, and he's the greatest of that artist. Or the drummers. Louis Prima and all of those other guys.
You could take, Jimi Hendrix was known for playing a Stratocaster, right?
Yes.
But there's no one else that really, you think of one instrument, one particular style of instrument, I don't know. That's incredible, and I think it's a testament to who he was as an artist.
Right. Not only did he travel in our country a great deal, but also out of the country, most particularly in Western Europe and in England and so forth. And he had his own club named after him on 42nd Street in New York City, not terribly far from where your sister used to live on 42nd Street, down in the main area of Broadway and 42nd Street. In that area was a club. I think it's closed down at the present time, but that was B.B. Riley B. King,
well,
the artist.
My buddy Grant, his folks used to live down in Memphis, and he was telling me a story one time. They had gone down to Beale Street, and they went into BB's spot, and they were like, the cover is $20 a person, or whatever. And he's like, "What are you talking about? It's not usually $20 a person, or whatever whatever the price was." And they're like, "Well, B.B. King's playing tonight," and he just take my money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I'm insanely jealous that I never got to see him play, and he just kind of got lucky. You stumble into a bar and a legend happens to be playing there at that night.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool. Grant, I'm jealous.
Yeah. Now, one of the things about B.B. that I really appreciate, he understood his importance in the history of blues, and he gave his whole collection of recordings to the University of Mississippi at Oxford, Mississippi. Not terribly far from where he grew up. And so you could go there now and see displays of all of his initial recordings at Ole Miss.
Now, why would he pick just because it was close to his home?
I think in part, and the fact that is the most noted university. People who come into doing research and what have you would go to University of Mississippi as opposed to, say, Jackson State or some of the other state schools or smaller schools in that regard. And the other fact is that he understood that his audience transcended anything in terms of, again, the black community and what have you. Yeah, he had a tremendous following as I said before, in Europe, and he just traveled all over the country. And was probably the most well known because of his traveling. Yeah, that was B.B. King. Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, I am going to introduce you to everyone's favorite billionaire, Sean Carter.
Okay.
Better known as Jay-Z, husband of Beyonce Carter. So I picked songs from two different albums here. One is his first album, Reasonable Doubt, which came out in 1996, and the Black Album, which came out in 2003. And this first one is off of that Reasonable Doubt project, and it's called The Evils. Well, it's a D apostrophe Evils, which put them together, and it says devils, and so there's just a lot of wordplay that goes on in this song, and I think it's brilliant. So I hope you enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yes.
There's a lot of layers to what he's saying and what he's talking about, and the stories he's telling, and I mean, there's references to movies, Higher Learning, Remy. He's one of the most important, pivotal characters in that movie, and he just slips it in. If you blink, you'll miss it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything stand out to you in this one?
The repetition here of "Dear God," starting out and ending, "Dear God, I wonder, can you save me?" It is as if he saying, "I want time to do what is required to be saved." He said, "I can't die, I can't die, I can't die." He doesn't want to die, as if he is hoping for some kind of revelation before he dies. And he's also questioning whether or not God has the ability to save such a person as he considers himself to be.
Yeah, I think, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the times when you look at work like this, you see guys who come from from poverty, and it's basically that do the ends justify the means. If I do this thing for money to feed my kid,
am I going to be held accountable, or can I be forgiven for it?
Exactly.
Yes.
And so you see where he says the money and power is changing us, and it's kind of that thing: more money, more power, or more money, more problems. You get to a point where money changes who people are, and they. You end up being someone that you don't necessarily want to be. At a point.
Yeah. He mentions that secret society trying to keep their eye on me. What do you think he means by the secret society? Is that?
I think that's a reference to the Illuminati. It's kind of conspiracy theory-ish.
Okay. All right.
The eye in the triangle.
Okay. All right. The Illuminati. Okay. All right.
Which is also interesting because. Well, I won't get into all the
Illuminati. I'm familiar with that. That makes sense now that he's talking about that. Yeah. How is he doing right now as an artist?
He just published an album, I think 2 years ago, called 444, which is if you look at the time on the clock, it'd be 4:44.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. It's grown man rap. Some of the things that he spoke about in his earlier works, you can definitely see that this is a young man rapping about fast cars, fast living, women, and 444 is more like, okay. He even says in one track that he could have bought a certain building in a certain neighborhood and paid $4 million for it, and now it's worth like $12 million, and I don't remember exactly what the figures were, but he was the neighborhood is called Dumbo, and he says I could have paid X amount of dollars in Dumbo for this amount of million, this number of millions, and now it's worth like 3 times as much, and he's like, guess how I feel now? Dumbo.
Gotcha.
And so he's got $1 billion in the bank. I think he's doing well.
I would think so.
I don't know about his mental state or anything. He seems to be all right, But,
okay.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites because his lyrics are so layered. Like every word is in place. Every word means something, and there's no waste in here.
Okay, I hear you. Okay.
So yeah, it's just something to keep an eye on for the next time we go around.
Well, the mere fact that he has certainly earned a lot of money, but also you say has been able to manage and keep a lot of money speaks volumes. As you well know, many artists, athletes who earn a lot of money end up not being able to keep it.
Sure.
So if he has that kind of money today, then it says speaks volumes about him, as I mentioned about Howlin' Wolf earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he in his career he came up more or less just selling drugs, and he references this in a couple of his songs that it came about 95, 96, and he had a decision to make.
Right.
Do I continue selling drugs or do I pursue this music full
thing,
time?
yeah.
And I think he made a pretty good decision.
I think he made a good decision.
The music has parlayed him. He's now into he's got like a vodka company. He owns several clubs or restaurants.
Right.
He's got a sports agency, Rock Nation. They represent some pretty large.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
I didn't know.
yeah.
Okay.
So he's very diversified. I think he's got a bunch of art as well.
It speaks volumes about his ability, his
Yeah.
management ability.
Yeah,
and
he's
being
super
able to see opportunities.
Yeah. I'm actually reading a book about him by a guy named Michael Eric Dyson.
I know him.
So I will keep reading the book and let you know what I think.
Yeah, okay.
It's on my Kindle, so I can't exactly hand you a physical book, but I'll figure something out to where you can read it if you want to.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Like to know more about him.
Yeah.
He's married to an interesting lady and a talented lady in himself.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Our
Number
next
2.
artist is the second part of the triad, the King brothers. This is Albert King. In this case, Albert King. King is not his birth name. His birth name was Albert Nelson. He changed his name for some reason at an early stage of his life. But Albert, like BB, is a Mississippi guy, born in Indianola, Mississippi, which again is sort of south central delta of Mississippi. Again, not too terribly far from God's country, my town, Peleachi, Mississippi, Choctaw Indian town, and
Do you think he picked King because it was already popular, or did they? What was the order of them?
I don't think so. I don't think because it was already popular. I'm not so sure.
Or maybe it's a bragging thing, like I'm the king of the blues.
He was born in 1923, long before BB King was real famous. I think it was an easier name to remember, and so I think they kind of. I didn't find anybody in his family name King, so in that deal, but he's shares something in common with Howlin' Wolf. He was a big man. 6'4", Howlin' Wolf was about 6'4", 6'5". From time to time, Howlin' Wolf weighed 300 pounds. Albert King was a big guy, weighed 250 at any particular time. And he also was unique in regards to his playing style or kind. He was a left-handed blues player.
Oh, okay. Left-handed.
And he moved from Mississippi, from the Delta, Indianola, spent a little bit of time, again, the same pattern in Memphis, getting on and so forth. And then he also caught the Illinois Central Railroad train and went to Chicago as well. But then he came back. And to St. Louis and spent his time here as an adult for the most part in the later years. And he moved to Brooklyn, Illinois, which is right across the river.
Yeah.
Now, this is the second time we have mentioned Brooklyn. Your artist is from Brooklyn.
That's right.
Albert King is now living in Brooklyn. Let me ask you a question.
He's still alive?
No, he died in a few years ago. 1992. He died. The name Brooklyn keeps popping up. Is Brooklyn, New York, and Brooklyn, Illinois original? Are there any other Brooklyns in the world? Do you know of? Where's the original Brooklyn?
I don't know. I think it'd probably have to be New York.
No, actually, New York is named after another Brooklyn from Europe.
Really?
And I have a son-in-law whose name is Maurice. And Maurice is from that country, Holland. That Holland has a town in that area called Brooklyn, Netherlands.
Okay.
And so Brooklyn, New York, as you well know, New York was initially not called New York. It was called and named New Amsterdam.
Oh, okay. Amsterdam.
And a lot of the towns and cities around that area, East Coast, Brooklyn, is named for Dutch cities. And there's a little town across the river from New York City called Hoboken. Mm-hmm. There's a Hoboken, Holland, Netherlands as well.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, yeah,
I didn't know that.
So Albert King moved to Brooklyn, Illinois, across the river, played and lived in this area until he died. And I'll also add that in playing around this area, St. Louis and across the river, people from Southern Illinois and from this area would go and listen to Albert King over in East St. Louis at a time when it was safe to do so. Again, here it's personal history. When I first came to St. Louis in the summer of 1968, I worked in Granite City, and I would shop in downtown East St. Louis on the weekends, get my hair cut. I had hair back in those days. Get my hair cut in East St. Louis, and they had one of the best jazz clubs in the area at the time, and so it was a popular place to go to hang out and have some entertainment. And Albert King played over there.
Wow.
And so forth. So we're going to hear one of his signature songs, and it's known as "Born Under a Bad Sign." Mm-hmm. Okay. Albert King from Indianola, Mississippi.
Okay.
Yeah. That bass player on "Born on the Bad Sign."
Yes. That was quintessential blues. I mean, you got somebody who's sad because he's been dealt a crap hand his entire life. You know.
Yes.
That's the blues.
But it's also consistent with what I said earlier about voodoo and the idea of having bad luck, born on the bad sign, or somebody putting a curse on you, what have you, and therefore you are limited by your ability to achieve what you want to achieve. And that's what he's getting to here in this regard. But Albert King was a quintessential blues player, and he had a tremendous stage presence, and whenever he appeared in public, people just loved him because I was saying he was just a huge man himself, and he was awkward in the way he held the guitar to play it in that regard. But he was a local guy from across the river, as they say. Yeah, that's Albert King.
I'll tell you what, I have heard a lot of his work. One of the ways that I stumbled onto him was he did an album with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and this I had it on Pandora. I had Pandora on, and one of these. A song had come on where it was him and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I tagged it thumbs up or whatever, and then went back later on, and I guess I probably can't say that word, but I was listening to a streaming service, and I tagged it and downloaded it later on another streaming service and listened to it top to bottom, and it was pretty cool the way he kind of he and Stevie Ray Vaughan they went back and forth, and it seemed like they had a really good relationship. At the time, Stevie Ray Vaughan, it seemed like he was up and coming, and it was kind of like a passing of the torch.
I see.
Like this guy's the next real deal. You guys should listen to him, and I think that's really cool for artists to do, and it happens all the time. But I liked it, and it's a great. And that song, "Born Under a Bad Sign," is on that album.
Is it? Yeah. Another song that he recorded was a big hit. Was called "Crosscut Saw." And that's, again, reference to wood industry in Mississippi. And you know what a crosscut saw is, right?
Yes.
It takes two people to operate that piece of equipment. And he talks about that he wants to come in contact with a lady. He wants to be the crosscut saw for her, basically. He wants to be drug across her wood, as he talks. That's Albert King. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, all right. We're going to get back into the hip hop portion with a song called December 4th, which happens to be Jay-Z's birthday. And what you will find here is Jay-Z's mom is on the album on this track. So it's actually kind of this is a cool song in my opinion. It's a little autobiography there.
Yeah, I found it interesting that his mom was involved here and talking about him being a special child, him giving her no pain during the birth, and he was a rather large child.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the average size baby, but 10 pounds and
10 pounds
4 ounces or 8 ounces.
That's a big turkey.
He was a big guy. Is he a big guy now? He's that bigger guy?
I don't think so.
He's not a howling wolf or
like 6'2", 6'3", something
okay,
like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
But it's certainly, she was right about one thing. He's a special guy in terms of talent.
Sure.
And do you know much about his formal education?
No, I do not. No. I wish I did, and I'm sure I'll come across it in the.
I'm just
the book
kind
I'm
of
reading.
interested and wonder how he was able to come up with this ability to put together the lyrics that he does and to tell a story cogently. Normally that kind of sometimes takes a bit of training and sometimes just a natural gift. Maybe kind of like Carole King with writing and so forth, and maybe that's the deal here. But certainly a talented guy in that regard.
Yeah. What did you think about her making the point that he taught himself how to ride a two-wheeler bike? What do you think about that?
Yeah, well,
kind of remind you of somebody?
You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't use training wheels ever.
That's wrong. You didn't. Some people have natural gifts, and so you just kind of get on with it. And you probably didn't have any protective headgear either, did you?
Thanks. Thanks for that.
Well, apparently you didn't need any.
Yeah, I had a thick skull. Must have been hereditary.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
All right. So you got number 3 up here. I think the third of the 3 kings.
The third of the 3 kings is Freddy, whose real name was King, Freddy King in this case, singer, and outstanding guitarist. He unfortunately was not a Mississippi guy. He was born in Gilmer, Texas, and back in 1934, and he did not spend any time in in Memphis as the other artists, but did in fact move to Chicago and played on the west side of Chicago over there with Howlin' Wolf and with Willie Dixon writing for him as well. And he signed with Cobra Records. But he actually then left Chicago for whatever reason and started recording on the East Coast and moved to New Jersey. So we don't have many blues artists who actually grew up or lived in New Jersey and worked out of there and travel as we have with Freddie King. And he is an outstanding guitarist, is a good singer as well, and one of his favorite outstanding blues guitar musical is called Hideaway. And we're going to listen to Hideaway next.
Okay. Sounds good. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here's another shuffle.
Yeah.
Here's the turnaround. Yeah. 12-bar blues.
Yeah.
That sounds like
That's a theme from a
Mission
television.
Impossible or something like that?
Yes. One of those type programs. One of detective. Exactly.
yeah. Did they get it from him, or is he
No,
just making a play on
he's
it?
making a play on there. Yes, very observant of you, sir.
Cool. Very cool.
That is Freddie King, younger than BB and Albert. And as I said, he moved to Chicago as a teenager. It is said that he snuck into clubs when he was a teenager. He was too young to actually be admitted legally, but he would sneak into clubs on the south side to hear Muddy Waters, and on the west side to hear Howlin' Wolf. And he was also influenced by T-Bone Walker, who was the favorite artist of your grandfather, John Myers, and Elmore James and Sonny Boy Williamson. And he also played on the west side with Willie Dixon, the good man, bassist from Vicksburg, Mississippi. That's Albert King, who died at a very early age, at 42, in New Jersey. He died of pancreatic cancer in 1976.
Freddie
King.
Yeah, right on. Well, cool. I really like that one.
Yeah.
Even though
Yes,
it has
sir.
no words, it's just
Yeah.
that was a fun song.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
Okay, now this one is called another Jay-Z. It's called Public Service Announcement, or Interlude is what you'll find it on the on the album, on the Black Album, which is again from 2003. I think this song is cool. It's everything you really look for in a rap song. It's got great production. You know, Jay-Z's on there and he's just bragging. He's so good at rap. People at this time have been calling him Jehovah, which is a play on Jehovah.
Oh,
Obviously.
okay.
So when he calls himself Hove or HOV, he's calling himself Jehovah. He's saying he's a rap god.
Okay.
Which
I see.
is not-
I did not know that.
Which is not uncommon for guys to find clever ways to refer to themselves. You know?
Yes.
So yeah.
Jehovah. Okay.
here we go.
Jehovah.
So the Black Album, when he published this particular project, it was understood that this was going to be his last album. So that's why there's a lot of like finality in a lot of his raps, like when he said "When you're dead or you're gone" in the last one, he's talking about like, I'm about to retire. You guys can have it. I'm still I'm the greatest. You know? And so a lot of his rapping, a lot of his lyrics here
is about retiring, leaving the scene.
Yeah, that's kind of the why it's got that tone.
Okay. Yeah.
But some of the stuff he's saying, flyer than a piece of paper, bearing my name like a flyer, check cheddar like a food inspector. That's ridiculous.
I saw that. Yeah.
And what did you think about this bar? I'm like Che Guevara with bling on. I'm complex. What did you think of when you heard that? Because I think that's one of the coolest things that any rapper has ever said.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you, why do you think that's so cool?
Because Che Guevara was he was a socialist, right?
Yes.
And so for him to have something ostentatious like gold or diamonds or jewelry, that's antithetical to what
socialist. Putting emphasis
so
on,
he's saying like,
yeah,
look, man, I'm this, but I'm also this.
Yeah.
And
So you can't put me into a bag or
Yeah.
corner. I have a little more complex than that, complexity issue.
Getting back to the way that we look at people nowadays, like, oh, this person's either bad or they're good, or this person's, I don't know. So I just love that.
Yeah.
I love that bar.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. I agree. Yeah.
And so he even continues, like, he understands that he's, there ain't no reason why I be buying expensive chains. Like, he knows that it's a waste of money, but like, and he can blame his environment, but like, he is who he is, and he even says this later, like, no matter where you go, you are what you are. You can try to change, but that's just the top layer.
Okay.
You was who you was before you got here. It's prophetic. Like, he's the nature of human beings. I think. Like, he speaks to that in a lot of his rhymes.
Yeah. You had mentioned Lexus automobiles and jewels, jewelry, and so forth, and that's not consistent with the lifestyle necessarily of, quote, the hood. But if you're successful in the hood, you can afford those type things and bring them back to the hood, and that may be inspiring to other people who are in the hood who don't, quote, see a way out.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and he even mentions here, I used to move snowflakes by the OZ. That's a direct, he's saying that he sold cocaine.
Yes.
So snowflakes,
yes.
I don't need to break that down anymore, but I mean, there are sometimes I don't know what
Was there at a particular point in time where he came to realization, you kind of mentioned it before, that he knew he had talent to do something else with? Was there any persons influencing his life? Was his mom or father or somebody said, now is the time to make the break to do music as opposed to what you've been doing? Is there anybody, was that a point in time that you can identify?
I can't right now, but once I finish this book, I'll probably be able to tell you.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure when. I think around that 96 time frame, because he had been very popular, more so in the Northeast. Around that time, here in the Midwest, the argument, a lot of the attention was on Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac in the West. So you had the East and West. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there was quite the beef between Tupac out of the West Coast and, to a lesser degree, I guess, Snoop and a guy named Suge Knight, who was the owner of the record label called Death Row Records.
Yeah.
And Bad Boy Records, who at the time still is owned by Sean Puffy Combs, and so it was Notorious B.I.G. and Puffy. They're the same label. Notorious B.I.G. was signed to Bad Boy, and then there's Death Row, and Death Row had Snoop and they had Tupac, and so it was like a East-West beef.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
And so, where exactly was I going with this? Anyway.
But getting back to Suge was domiciled in Las Vegas, was he not?
I don't know about that. But
Isn't that where he died?
No, I think Suge Knight is still alive, but
Really?
Tupac was killed there.
Oh, I'm thinking, okay, it was Tupac
was killed
okay,
in Las Vegas.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, so my point was that at the time, at the mid '90s, it was Biggie and Tupac, and Jay-Z kind of was very, very popular on the East Coast mostly, even more so among hip hop heads. But like he really wasn't as popular as he was. It took a couple of years, and he had a smash hit called God, what was it? Was it? I think it might have been Hard Knock Life. And then shortly after that, Big Pimpin', which I'll probably play for you at some point. But he had a couple of really, really massive records, and he went from, kind of very well-known artist to like one of the most well-known artists in the world. So it was. It happened like in the blink of an eye in like 97, 98, and then 99, and his worth like quadrupled.
Wow.
So
Wow.
how things can turn around. Real quick.
Indeed.
So I think at some point we'll get more into the East Coast to West Coast beef, but for our purposes now, we'll just shelf that.
Yeah, kind of reminds me again the South Side and West Side of Chicago beef.
Yeah.
Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. That's the
Well, the good thing is that it didn't end with people getting
No,
shot.
no.
Which is,
However, as we play the next one, I'll comment upon that because it could well have been, given the artists involved here with the next guy we're going to talk about on blues.
Did their fans ever get insanely defensive over their artists, or
The fans had their loyalties. There were some people who only went to Muddy Waters concerts, but there were some who did both.
Sure.
And like I said, I never went to saw Muddy Waters, but I would have. I just they got busy, and because he played near where I lived, but I just never did. I just busy guy. I was working.
Yeah.
And Howlin' Wolf was on the way home one night.
Right on. So what do we have next?
So we have next one of my favorite blues guys, and he is not that well known because he didn't make a lot of records. He only had maybe 4, 5, or 6 different hits. Primarily, he was a backup artist playing in the bands of other people like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf. But his name is Marion Walter Jacobs, better known as Little Walter.
Why didn't he stick with Marion?
I don't think that would go well. I'm not so sure. But sadly, Little Walter was not born in Mississippi.
Oh, man.
He's the second guy who's not a Mississippi guy that I've spoken about. He's not from Texas. He's from Marksville, Louisiana. And he was a harmonica player. He didn't write, but he could sing. He did do some writing for himself, not for others. He was an outstanding harmonica player. And again, a little bit like some of the artists you mentioned, or Jay-Z and others, he played harmonica, but he never took harmonica lessons. He didn't have any formal musical education, and yet he was able to rise to the position, in my humble opinion, as the greatest blues artist in the history of that genre, having played with Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and on his own. And so Lil Walter Jacobs, just an outstanding guy. He moved to Chicago and got associated with Chess Records. And maybe at another time, it would be a good discussion to have about Chess Records.
I would think so.
Chess Records itself is a company that got started in Chicago back in the late 40s, early 50s time frame by 2 Polish Jews who came over here with nothing, no money. But they recognized a genre, blues, that was had these outstanding artists, and they needed someone to record them and promote them, and they filled the gap. And so all of the great blues guys in Chicago, from Muddy Waters to Howlin' Wolf to Lil Walter Jacobs, signed with and played for Chess Records in Chicago, and the Chess Records became the number 1 blues recording studio in the world.
Yeah, they keep coming up.
Yeah, and they were on 42nd Street. On Martin Luther King Drive, which was then called Carter's Grove, about 2500 south from downtown Chicago. I used to drive by there quite often, but I never went in. I just saw the sign, but they were still there when I lived there. And we're going to listen to Lil Walter in one of his songs. He had about 4 or 5 hits, one which was called My Babe and Jute, but this one is called Mean Old World.
Okay.
To live in by yourself.
All right, here we go.
This is a mean old world. Try living by yourself. Feeling
Of all the artists we talked about, he was the most difficult person to live with, to have in a band. Howlin' Wolf couldn't control him. Muddy Waters couldn't control him. He was a hothead. He bought a brand new Cadillac in the late 1950s and took off. It was a two-door Cadillac and took off both the doors. Drove around the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
And he died at an early age of 38. The greatest blues harmonica player in the world. And it was really, really a sad day for everybody who knew about blues.
Yeah.
Who can replace Little Walter Jacobs? And everybody said nobody.
What did he die from?
I think heart complications. Another way of saying, I think probably alcoholism. He was a heavy drinker. I don't think it was drugs, just drink. He was, and he played better harmonica drunk than most people could play sober. That's Little Walter Jacobs from Marksville, Louisiana, not Mississippi.
So why do you think, I mean, you've mentioned, this is our what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is our 7th or 8th guy.
Yes.
Why do you think all this talent comes from like 1 or 2 or 3 states in the whole country? Why is it all from like right here, right there in the middle of the...
That to me is really a good question, good observant question. It is very similar to hubs, manufacturing hubs or IT hubs. Why most of the IT activity comes from Silicon Valley? Why were most cars produced in Detroit, Michigan? And the answer is that 1 or 2 will go there and they will attract other people who will imitate them, in essence. Say it differently. In the Delta of Mississippi, if you were going to be as a young person, you looked around to see who would be your influenced person who's going to influence you the most. It was not the people, the farmers. It was not the people who own small businesses. It was the blues artists. They were held up in high esteem. And so as a young kid, you get a guitar, you get a harmonica, which were inexpensive instruments, by the way, compared to horns and other things. And everybody could afford a $2 harmonica or $10 guitar. And they were influenced by the people around them whom they looked up to.
Wow. So it's just hours and hours and hours of getting better at that.
Yeah. And then some of the blues artists, if you like Robert Johnson and Trinity Boy Williamson, they would take time with new artists coming up to teach them licks and how to play and so forth. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I think I might download some more of his stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, I've learned a great deal about hip hop from our discussion here today, and
I have one more.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay. All right.
One last. This one is what more can I say? And I don't think it with a title like that. I don't think you can really preface it at all.
Okay.
So
I
here you go.
Yeah.
This is from Gladiator. Remember
That was
Okay.
covered a lot of territory. A little difficult to follow.
That's why I gave you the lyrics.
Yeah. We're trying to keep up with him, but yeah. Is that one of your favorite recordings of this artist?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
what do you like most about it?
Well, first of all, he starts off, he's telling me like there's never been anybody this good for this long, which is true. He made over 10 albums. Well, I think this was his 9th album, but he's made a bunch of albums, and his career is spanning. He's 40 years old. Wait, he's more than 40, but he's old by rap standards. It's a young man's game,
Yeah.
And the fact that he's still relevant at this age when this song came out it's abnormal. And he's saying he's got so many different flows. This one's for this song. The next one I'll switch it up. I mean, he's saying he can rap on any beat, effectively and well. And the competition they're lazy and they don't paint pictures with words. They just trace what he's already done. If you're not paying attention to what he's saying, it'll go straight over your head because it rhymes and it sounds good. You might just say, "Oh, okay, he rhymed 2 words together,"
Right.
But he's saying, "Hey, I'm painting pictures. These guys aren't painting pictures. They're tracing over what I've already done. They're rapping like me. They're taking my style, and they can't do it as well as I can."
I see.
That's what I love about this. He's also, he says, he gives a shout out to, I say a big verse, I'm only bigging up my brother. They're very good friends, him and Notorious B.I.G.
I see. Yeah.
Bigging up his borough. He's from Brooklyn also. Marcy Projects is where he came from.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's it's
Again,
crazy.
he goes out his way to mention again in I think each one of these songs where he's from.
Yeah.
his location or his hometown, or in this case Brooklyn. What do you think he's really saying about that? Does Brooklyn have such a reputation that?
Well, I think at the time it's not the Brooklyn that people know now. It was a lot more violent and rough coming up, and him saying that he's where he is now. He's telling the people that are in Brooklyn, like, you can make it out. You can, sky's the limit, to quote Biggie. But he's representing his hometown. Like very much the same way that Notorious B.I.G. did and 314 City Gear does with their repping the 314. But it's all about a sense of pride and where you come from for him.
Okay.
And also like providing that hope for younger kids that they can make something of their lives and it's not completely hopeless.
Yeah.
Private jets down to Turks and Caicos.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Chris caseloads, that's Cristal, that's a type of champagne.
Okay. I missed that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that
Yeah. What are Deuce sneakers? He mentioned new sneakers, Deuce sneakers, Deuce seaters, 2-seaters.
2-seaters, yeah, it's coupes.
Coupes,
a car that's got 2.
Gotcha. Yes, okay, I got you.
Coupes are more expensive and more fun to drive, I guess you would say.
Okay.
S dots. He's talking about the S dot Carters. He had a shoe deal with Reebok at the time.
Oh. Okay.
So you're talking about a guy who went from selling crack, and then a couple years later, he's got his own. He's got all these endorsement deals, and he's not even an athlete. Which is, again, he references it in this song. Also, he's a hustler.
Yeah. And he mentions when they've got you in a magazine for half of a billy. What's a billy?
$1 billion.
Wow.
He's talking about being listed in Forbes.
Okay.
As his private his net
That's
worth
what he's
being
talking. Okay, he's talking about himself. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
$1 billion. $1 billion.
For half a billion.
Got to interpreted language here. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he's done quite well, obviously.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So he's this is just
So as these artists, such as this gentleman, are getting up in age, what is the future like for hip hop? Do you think?
well, I think it's the most popular genre on the face of the earth right now. And there's a couple of different factions. There's people my age that tend to really value the lyrics and being able to for an artist to tell you a story, or to even if you're just bragging, but you can be very very clever about the way you brag on yourself. There's value in that. But there's a couple factions in hip hop right now. There's like the younger generation that don't really think that lyrical content's all that important, and so a lot of them mumble, and the lyrics don't make any sense. But it sounds cool. So you've got that faction, and then you've got like, hey man, I want like dope lyrics. I want like stuff that makes me think. I want my rap to have a point. I want it to either tell me a story or entertain me or address something that needs to be addressed. Like a lot of hip hop songs, they especially like Public Enemy, for example, they'll tackle issues that are prevalent in the hood. I don't know if you remember 911 as a joke, but they were going out of their way to make a point like, hey, if you are in a poor section of a city and you call 911, they ain't showing up in 3 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
But if somebody in Ladue, for example, calls, they'll be right there.
Right there.
So there's a lot of conflict in terms of who wants to steer hip hop where.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you necessarily even have to take sides. I think that music is going to be what it's going to be, and it's open for interpretation. And if it's not for you, it's not for you.
Right. So where as a teenager interested in hip hop, he or she is not going to hear it on the radio, not necessarily on TV programs of any length. So, and you're not going to see a lot of hip hop artists in clubs around the area, are you?
They tour from time to time, yeah, but I guess most of these artists where kids and people will go and find them is online. Clearly.
Just online, internet. That's what I'm saying.
Streaming is huge. I don't even, they don't count record sales anymore. I don't know how they count record sales because streaming is so prevalent. So I think they count streams now as opposed to album sales because no one buys albums. Like I have a streaming service and I listen to songs, but I don't buy an album unless I really want to buy that album.
Exactly. Okay.
So yeah, you have to go where the music is, and a lot of times that means making a choice whether it be platform A, B, or C, or D, or whatever the case is. So
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you think the genre is going to be around? It's most popular right now, and just for the near future, huh?
I do. It's insanely profitable. You've got rappers like Kanye West. He has his Yeezy brand of shoe. He's never played a professional sport in his entire life.
Yeah.
Travis Scott has an edition of Jordan. Sean Carter, Jay-Z had Reeboks. I saw a Mountain Dew commercial with the Migos on it today, and I know you don't know who they are, but they're some of the younger. They're in the new guard of hip hop, and they're getting major sponsorships from, I believe that's a Coca-Cola brand, Mountain Dew. But yeah, you're seeing advertisers give real dollars to these guys, and it's not going. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think that it was going to pay off in the end.
Okay. So how would an American artist, hip hop artist, participate in the international hip hop movement? That is to get people to listen to their music, or somebody they sponsor in China or Japan or Spain or
internet.
So in other words, if you're Sean Carter, would you try to find artists there to record under your auspices or under your label?
That's happened, yeah. Okay. There's been a couple of guys that have been found that way. A young man by the name of Justin Bieber was discovered by Usher, and Usher saw a YouTube clip of him singing.
So he kind of signed him up and
the rest is history. So, the internet is, as you know, you teach in your business courses, it's insanely powerful, and the reach is infinite. So, well, is there anything you'd like to wrap up or anything?
I'd just like to say that to the audience, thank you for listening, and I've enjoyed chatting about my favorite genre. Blues is part of my heritage and my background, and I've enjoyed it for the many, many decades. But as I said before, I enjoy all genres. I like a little bit of classic. I particularly like country music as part of my history and background. Back in the old days in Mississippi, we only had a few radio stations, and one radio station, depending on the time of day, would play a little bit of classical, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of blues, a little bit of country, a little bit of gospel, certainly on the weekends, on Sunday. And so even in rural Mississippi, you got a chance, exposure to all of the genres of music.
Yeah.
That's why I like it all.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Even back in that area, we had some Bourbon Street type of blues, that sort of thing that we would get in Mississippi as well.
Zydeco?
Yeah, Zydeco,
Yeah.
exactly. All of that, all the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys always did a good job of introducing us to music.
Yeah.
I remember going to the symphony at a very young age and learning to play like violin and
Yeah.
piano and cello and a lot of different instruments, and it was always around,
Yeah.
especially during the holidays. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that, and I thank you for always having music around in the house.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Um, So we'd like to thank you guys for joining and listening to us talk, chop it up a little bit. I think the next episode, I'll probably introduce Pop to Black Thought, one of my favorite MCs. He is the lead MC for The Roots, Jimmy Fallon house band. If you don't know who they are, check them out. And we really do encourage you guys, I know we can't play all these songs on YouTube or on our podcast, but we'll give you the name of the artist and the song, and we really hope that you will check these songs out at your leisure, even if that means opening up another browser and listening to that on another page. So once again, thanks guys for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, 314 City Gear, Leah Myers, Realtor with Keller Williams. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys next time.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye now.